My name's Duncan Craig. I'm the founder and chief executive of Survivors Manchester. Survivors Manchester story is a long and, I suppose in some way, complicated story, but it really goes right back to about 2005. I was training to be a therapist. In the training, you have to do what they talk about as clinical practice, and I started noticing with some of the men that I was working with in a NHS setting that there was nowhere for me to refer them on to, if actually that one of their key problems was about stuff that's happened to them in the past, and usually it was about child abuse or childhood sexual abuse, and these men hadn't spoken about anything for 20, 30 years, and they were going to the doctor with depression, anxiety, and then in the therapy room were revealing maybe what they thought of as the cause. There was absolutely nowhere for me to refer them to, and I guess in some way I started beginning to recognise a lot of their behaviours and a lot of their feelings as being quite familiar to me. Over the next kind of 12 months, from round about 2005, 2006, I began to have to start dealing with and questioning my own life, getting to the point in about 2006 where I had to sort of face up to the experiences that I'd gone through when I was a child. I found some help online, but it was in America. And as a proud Mancunian, I've always thought the Tony Wilson phrase of "this is Manchester, we do things differently here." It didn't feel like we were doing things differently. In fact, it felt like we were doing things the same, because everywhere that I contacted in the UK, the answer was pretty much, "We can't help you. You're either not from our area or we only support women here." And as soon as I qualified as a therapist, and as soon as I was able to maybe strong arm a couple of friends into developing a board of trustees, we had what became the first preliminary meeting of the founding trustees of Survivors Manchester.
My involvement started very early on when Duncan had this idea of creating Survivors Manchester. All I wanted to do is really help a friend with a vision that they had. So the first thing that I did was just volunteer and did loads of fundraising, did loads of runs. I used to be able to run back then, not anymore. And yeah, raised the first few £1,000s so that Survivors Manchester could start.
Well, when we started out, so as I said, I joined prior to us being a charity, and we were in a small cold room above Hollywood Show Bar on Bloom Street in Manchester. It was a group of like-minded professionals who'd had their arm twisted really by Duncan, our chief exec, to get involved in Survivors Manchester, and I was one of those that Duncan came to sort of ask for some money to try and set this up when I was in my role as head of mental health Manchester. I said no, but very intrigued by what he had to offer and what he had to say, so decided that rather than look to fund, I would provide some of my personal sort of support and input. And yeah, that's where we started.
So all of a sudden I was asked to attend a meeting in the evening in an office in a housing association in an area I'd never been to of Manchester. And when I entered the room, there was about 12 people there who I'd never met other than Duncan, and I realised I'd been asked to join the board of Survivors Manchester. So when we first got there, Survivors Manchester was essentially Duncan and a pay-as-you-go mobile phone.
We applied for all of the support that we could get and sent everything off to the Charities Commission and Companies House. And on the 5th of February 2009, a knock on the door on my flat, Saturday it was, opened the door, it was a postman, asked me to sign for an envelope, opened it, and it was a certificate to say that the Companies House was formally recognising Survivors Manchester as a not-for-profit organisation. And that's really where the journey begins.
He helped me make a denim, that's where he sexually abused and raped me. Suicide and murder, that's what I had in mind for many years. And again, that's because I was so et up and confused and trapped inside.
Charities also play a huge important part in supporting domestic abuse victims. I would like to personally thank Survivors Manchester.
What government are doing by announcing a dedicated fund for male services for male survivors, it's breaking the silence.
The work that we've done makes a couple of guys realise that, you know, they need to get some help and they need to get some support. Then that's an incredible sort of side product of our work.
It's Duncan Craig from the Survivors Manchester charity, which supports male victims of sexual violence and child abuse.
Meeting the Queen, you know, what an incredible woman, and somebody that, you know, I personally find quite inspiring. She said, congratulations, she said, good for you. She asked if I was a survivor, and I said, yes, I am, Your Majesty.
We've been going for 13 years now. We've absolutely just grown and grown throughout that period of time.
Every time we've worked with actors who have then picked up various different gongs, they have, you know, they've thanked us, and that's created much more conversation. Going back to the Coronation Street story, the first big story we did with Coronation Street, with the David Platt rape storyline, 72 hours after the episode aired, I found myself stood on Coronation Street with Ryan, who played the rapist in the show, talking to ITN News as we are recognising and finding out that we'd had a 172% increase in calls to the helpline. We had 65% more people asking for help than we'd ever had before. It's astonishing what can happen. But I have to say, I have to always go back to the biggest influence has been on individuals.
I remember having them discussions with my friends and people's minds being blown around. They just didn't think about them numbers, how this could actually happen, and does it happen a lot, you know, like to being involved in the largest rape case in history within Greater Manchester. That was worldwide, so like that influence there of having that structure of as an organisation to kind of deal with that from the size of us. We've shown so much growth as an organisation.
I believe we're the largest charity to support men and boys who have been victims of sexual violence. So we're sort of leading the sector, I believe. I think what's been really great about our charity is from the start we've had a really strong brand identity. So we've recently just produced an education pack which has gone out to every secondary school, every academy and every sixth form across the whole of Greater Manchester. It's an education pack around a film called Ripped. Ripped explores the fallout of what happens to a young man who's experienced rape. The film really is about how he copes with that experience in his life and about how it ties in with his own identity and his own masculinity. And it's an excellent jumping off point for conversation for young people.
To have that reach and to have that document going to so many people and potentially for it to make such a big difference to people's lives was a huge project to be involved with, and something I was really kind of happy to be kind of leading on in terms of the design and branding. So really pleased to see that kind of going so far and working with the team on getting that done.
This is such a great thing now in the world that is so social media based, to be able to spread that awareness to everyone, to millions of people on all these platforms. And that's why I love doing the content that I do now, because I know through everything, the content that I'm going to do will help a lot of people to get the help that they also need.
The aim is that no male survivor will be left behind, and I think we're sort of heading towards that. and always being conscious that that's our goal.
So what's an ISVA? An ISVA is Independent Sexual Violence Advisor, and it's our role to support somebody through the criminal justice process. So we support somebody right from report to court. So that's everything from making the initial report to the police, all the way to seeing them and supporting them right through to a trial. So our ISVA work takes us all over the place, really. We support our police interviews, which are known as ABEs. So we call it an ABE because that's about achieving best evidence. So that can be quite a traumatic experience for a client to be able to have to go and talk about, maybe for the first time ever, in depth what's happened to them. So it's really important to have that support there. We're fortunate enough to be getting our own ABE interview suite here. We'll also work from court. Obviously, if somebody goes to trial, we're there at the side. Before it even gets to trial, we'll organise a pre-trial court visit, which is a time for that client to go to the court when the court is closed with their ISVA, have a look around the courtroom so they get a feel for where everything is and who's going to be where. So it's not such a shock to the system really going in, because we all see court on TV. It's nothing like that. So we also do some training, for other services, so that can take us away from the office. And very recently, our ISVA team did a presentation for this North West CPS Away Day, which was really interesting. Generated lots of questions at the end of the session as well, which was really good. Some of the favourite bits of my job, I would say, would be being in a position to offer support and help to our clients. Often they come here and they feel quite hopeless, and then they kind of arrive here, see what we're doing, and you can see sometimes the relief kind of falling away from them when you first sit down with them in that first session. So I think that's a really nice part about working here, is being in a position to help. I think going into the prisons as well is something I'd always wanted to do. There's enough barriers to males not reporting, so being in prison shouldn't have been one of them, and it was for a long time, and it isn't anymore. Again, I think a big part of my enjoyment working for Survivors Manchester is being able to go into the prisons as well and do that work there.
Okay, so we're just stood outside Manchester Prison. Currently we give 4 full days to HMP Manchester for therapy, and we have approximately 70 people on our wait list. We are currently engaged with approximately 20 plus men that are in here, but we support many more just in wellbeing checks and making sure that they're okay before they actually come into therapy, and trying to be a little bit more creative due to long waiting times. It was one of our first prisons that we actually came into with the help of Governor Rob Knight, who has been a great ally for us since he's helped us set up our original service in HMP Buckley Hall.
My name is Alison Lloyd, and I'm the Criminal Justice Director for Outspoken Services and Criminal Justice Services within Survivors Manchester.
I'm Rob. I'm a trauma-informed therapist working for Survivors Manchester in their Outspoken department in UK prisons, Northwest UK prisons.
Outspoken Prison Trauma Therapy Services, a service that we offer across the northwest of England. So that is 15 prison establishments, including a female estate. We offer 15 prisons trauma therapy. They get 3 days a week. We're trauma therapists, we hold waiting lists. We sit between mental health and safer custody, and work with the prisons to make sure that any survivor and or person who's experienced some kind of trauma within their life actually can access some trauma therapy and help the healing process.
I like the feeling of giving back in some way. I'm not somebody who has been to prison myself personally, but I'm somebody who has connection to the idea of going to prison and people I know have been to prison and stuff like that.
Outspoken has been running for 6 years. It has originally started at HMP Buckley Hall up in Rochdale, and it was started by Duncan Craig, our Chief Executive. It's really broad, a more broader spectrum within the prison service that we run, because if we went into prisons generally and said, hey, we're just a service for people who've been sexually abused, had sexual assaults against them, I don't think our uptake would be as great as it has been. It's still very taboo in a lot of the male estates, so yes, whilst we are breaking the silence, we are also wanting to reach other people who may have had other kinds of trauma. So we put it under an umbrella of trauma therapy, and this incorporates probably about 44% of kind of people are survivors within our service, and that's increasing more and more as we kind of get more and more established.
It's a very rewarding to know that I'm giving back to people who are often forgotten about. You know, that's not excusing what they've done. You know, some people have done some bad things, and some people deserve to be in prison for the things that they've done. But I do also believe they deserve a chance to change and become better people. You know, and I'm being part of that solution. You know, it might only be a 0.01%, but I'm being part of that solution, and for me, that's probably the bit I enjoy the most.
Yeah, so I'm Jeff, I'm the Community Development Worker here at Survivors Manchester. So the whole idea of the team really is to create safe spaces for the men that we support to build on their healing together, whether that's inside this building or whether it's outside. We offer lots of different group activities for the lads that we support, so things like our drop-in, which takes place every Monday between 2 and 6. And that's a safe space where the lads can come, they can have a brew, they can do jigsaws if they want, they can do some mindfulness drawing, colouring in.
We can also provide creative writing, art rooms and different groups so that clients and service users can come together and be involved with the different activities that we can provide and providing that safe space for our clients to come to.
We've also got coffee meets that we do out in the community, so we change those locations each month, and it's just an opportunity for lads to come along, have a coffee in the community rather than sort of behind the closed doors here. I think that's an important part of healing, really, being in the community, integrating back in the community and not feeling alone.
Anytime you're with a fellow survivor, it's a very powerful experience. A survivor for the longest of times suffered on their own. Their experiences they kept to themselves. So when you're with fellow survivors and you share what you've been through, openly and honest with no shame, it's very powerful.
Everything I think that we actually operate for is breaking down the stigma. Obviously the tagline of breaking the silence, but it's creating that safe place for individuals to come to at any point of their journey, and to have that place that they can absolutely rely on and know that when they come here, it can be for however they want to engage with our service, but they get to have that choice of somewhere they can go to, and it should always be there as survivor-centric, lifelong support.
The client gets the best support that we can provide, and that's the best thing about working for survivors, about that client being number one.
My name is Sash and I'm the Therapy Services Lead for Survivors Manchester. So the therapy service provides one-to-one support for men who have been sexually abused or raped using trauma-informed techniques. So essentially using therapy interventions to give people the skills they need to manage their symptoms of trauma, then looking at processing and moving forward with that trauma, and then being able to integrate everything they've learned so they can move through the world and live in accordance with their values and who they want to be from there on. Therapy can teach a client how to take care of themselves, how to manage their emotions. It can teach them a lot about themselves, but it's only part of a whole really. Everything that Survivors offers, from the therapy to the community development team through the ISVA service, I think it all culminates in a holistic approach which actually provides a client with everything they need. So what therapy provides that one-to-one interaction, but community provides that community, which, you know, I think is just everything that a survivor needs. Particularly when it comes to being a male survivor, there's a lot of loneliness that comes with that. There's a lot of disconnection. So, you know, the fact that Survivors offers this in all aspects, I think, is actually what makes Survivors so special.
I think what made it so easy, for myself anyway, was the fact that the person I initially saw and was having sort of weekly chats with, they'd also been through abuse as a child, so they knew exactly how it felt, and they were so understanding, and it was just taken at my pace. Nothing was ever rushed. It was all around how I was coping, what I needed at that time. And I've said this to Duncan, CEO, on many occasions, that I know that without that I wouldn't be here now.
I think the best thing that's came out of this year is that we absolutely came with our first instance of a 5-year plan, which actually gave us a destination and a journey that we were going on, and it has clear aims there. So we have our horizons that we've set over the next 5 years to kind of really break down the age in some areas of who we can support, to actually reduce the amount of men in silence and really attack that, not just kind of just putting a bit more promotion out there, but really attacking to reduce that age by 5 years at least, I think, there, to actually benefit every individual who's gone through this. And then the kind of really looking at our locality and kind of where do we move from this. We are a bigger organisation than the name goes sometimes, Survivors Manchester. So whether it be a Survivors GM, a North, a national kind of aspect that we have, but I think we've got a good clear vision now that we all know what we added with our values that we can take forward and everyone's on board with.
Yes, there will always be better ways to reach men and boys, and it's just really about taking lessons learned and moving forward, and always looking to increase our reach to those that need us.
Obviously, it's a massive organisation now to what it was when Duncan started off 14 years ago, and each year you see things change, and more and more support becoming available to the survivors that are accessing the group.
I think the future for Survivors Manchester looks bright. I think we've got so much more to give, we've got so much more to learn. Survivors Manchester is a really knowledge and data-rich organisation, and we haven't shared much of what we know. Not because we don't like to play out with everybody else, because we do. It's because I think sometimes we don't know how to share the information. We don't know what information other organisations want, criminal justice services want. So we're going to be, and we're going to play, a really significant part in getting the United Kingdom talking about and understanding male sexual violence in a way that I don't think they've ever understood that before.
you know, many people here are survivors too. We know what that is, and we know the path forward, and that's a really great thing for people who perhaps don't feel they're able to kind of communicate about their experiences and about their trauma. We're here for them, and I only see that continuing to expand.
My advice to the silent survivors out there, whether I'm sat here in the beautiful and safe surroundings of Survivors Manchester, or whether I'm sat on a red sofa on the BBC or on the news, is always this. There are people out here ready to listen to you. There are people out here that want to support you, but we want to support you when you're ready. Not when anybody else tells you you're ready, but when you're ready.
In your own time, you'll know in yourself when you're ready. Don't let fear hold you back. Just know that there's survivors are here, we can help. You're not on your own. That's the most important thing.
As difficult as it may feel, just pick up the phone or send the email, you know, and begin that process.
We are here for whenever you are ready to come and speak or not speak and just want to turn up to a drop-in and just sit there and get some information. Use a website, social media, just follow that traction there. It's knowing that there is something out there that you can absolutely be a part of, and when you are ready, there'll be the best staff that we could ever have supporting you through that journey, to engage with us and to always know the journey will be based on what you want to do. It's never going to be dictated to you. It's a survivor-led organisation in every sense of the word. Everybody comes in here with their concepts of how it could be, but it's absolutely defined by the individual of how they want to engage and how they want their journey to be. It's your choice.
You might pick up the phone, or you might start an email and you put the phone down and you cancel the email. It's fine. Don't worry about it. All I want you to do is keep trying. If you have to try 19,000 times, fine, don't worry. Just keep going, because we'll wait here for you for when you're ready.